Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Good Morning Soul. I am your host, Soul, and today we are talking about another phase of my growing up period. We're talking about my first job. I know in a previous episode I talked about how I worked for my mom and I worked the cash register at her store. And some people consider that a first job. I would not. My first real job that was like taxes, IRS, like an actual real job, was working for Taco Bell. And I remember when I was 15, I was filling out basically I was trying to fill out job applications like all the time. And after a while I was like, okay, you need to be 16 to get a job. And a lot of jobs that I was applying for, like even at 16, were like, oh, you gotta be 18. So I was even trying to get what are those things called? Where you're allowed to work an 18-year-old job even though you're not 18. But I couldn't get that done. So I was applying for places left and right. Most of the applications I was doing was online. Since I don't think I even had a car at this point in time, so I think I was just throwing my applications out everywhere. And if I couldn't get a ride, then I was just gonna figure it out. And so I remember McDonald's called me, but at this point I was already I had a voicemail from McDonald's. They were offering me a job, and this was it was a month or two after that I read that voicemail. I was kind of like, fuck. And at that point I was already talking to the people at Taco Bell who they left a message on my phone. I called them back. They set up an interview. My first interview went awful. I remember I was so nervous. I fucked up a lot of the words. I remember I was stuttering so bad. I was kind of just and then she just kind of cut me off. That's how bad I was stuttering. She was kind of a lot of fast food people are gonna be bitchy to you all day because it's a stressful job, and they're just bitter assholes. And don't work for fast food in general because they're run by evil corporations that are okay with serving out terrible food, and they want all of America to run on their terrible food that will destroy their bodies from the inside out. And they the servers that they have to give out that terrible food are just teenagers and people who are the higher up fast food people who are just people who would probably work a different job if they had the opportunity to. So don't work in fast food. I work at a restaurant now, and it's everything that fast food could never give to me, and I made way more money working at a restaurant than I would if I stayed at Taco Bell. But I went in for the interview, and then they had the day one, the first day you work, I thought it was just gonna be me, but there was 7 other people, and it was all their first day, and I was like, fuck, immediately. All the other people were in their 20s, they had their shit down, they knew what they needed to say, and they were all dressed perfect. And I was, they said wear black shirt, black pants, or whatever it was. And they said, black shoes. And I went out and bought black shoes. They weren't the shoes that I would know now to buy. They were just, black shoes. And they were immediately the girl who interviewed me was like, oh, you can't wear those. Those aren't it has to be slip resistant because they don't want any people slipping and suing them, right? And I was kind of like, oh, shit, okay. And I remember I tried to return those shoes, and they were like, oh, you got them too dirty. You can't return these. I was like, I wore them literally once. I don't think they're that dirty. They're like, oh, no, it's too dirty. So I had this pair of shoes that I bought for $50 that looked awful. They were they were just normal black shoes that the laces were stupid as fuck. And I was kind of like, oh, that's cool. I just wasted $50 on this pair of shoes that you said I can't wear. And then I had to buy another pair of shoes, work shoes at Walmart that were $20. And it was such a terrible experience. And I remember at Taco Bell, everyone had an attitude. There was 1 or 2 cool people, and everyone else had an attitude. And I was obviously in high school at the time, so I was pretty much just working weekends. And so the weekends I was working, it was awful. Like, it was my first job. I think most people are shitty at their first job. I was very shitty at Taco Bell because I eat at Taco Bell a little bit. I usually get the same thing, but at this point in time, I literally had only eaten at Taco Bell like less than a dozen times. I probably just ordered a taco. At this point in time, I knew nothing on the menu. I didn't know any of the shit that I was making. Like, people were just throwing names at me. People were like, "Oh, this is a Crunchy Wrap Supreme." I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is. And just little things that I know now, like the importance of temperatures, like actual restaurant food I know now, and they probably like don't even consider a lot of that because I don't think any of them are like actual cooks. They're just, fast food workers. And I'm sure like at McDonald's and stuff like that, even they have to like keep track of temperatures and shit like that a lot better because they're working with like meat and burgers, stuff that you'll get sick if you eat raw. Whereas like tortillas and lettuce, I don't think you're gonna get sick eating. But I remember the 5-layer burrito. The 5-layer beefy burrito is what I usually order at Taco Bell, and I knew how to make that shit day one. But like everything else, like I was learning so much slower than anyone else because I was only working the weekends. So by like week 4, like I'd only worked like 6 days or 7 or something. But by then everyone else had worked like there for like a month straight and they knew their shit. So I was like the weak link like right away, and I was, very bad at socializing. Nowadays, like in a work environment, I will like force myself to be a better speaker. But back then, like it was very hard for me to communicate with the other workers, and none of them like seemed interested in like this is how you do this. It was kind of just like they was throwing me online and just like, oh, keep up. I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And they're just like, oh, too fucking bad. You do this. Like they would explain if they really had to. And I remember I took a day off. It was WrestleMania. It was WrestleMania 30. And, it was a big deal to me, and I wasn't going to miss it. And I told them, like, they were like, oh, is there a day ahead of time, that you need off? And I told them about it. But then when they put the schedule on, like, they didn't put my day that I wanted off. So I was like, oh, I guess I have to make some shit up. So I was like, oh. It's my sister's wedding, which was a complete lie. And she was like, oh, you have to tell about that us ahead of time. I was like, I kind of did, but whatever. So they were upset that I took that day off. And from that point on, like, they were ready to fire me. And so it was like, I worked like 2 or 3 days after that. I still sucked. Like, I was still slow. And I was working Saturday nights, which is like, I don't know if most fast food places, that's their like busiest hours, but like at my current job, that's the busiest hours, like Saturday. And so I was working these terrible, these incredibly stressful times of the day as like the weakest link, and no one wanted to train me. So I was doing a terrible job, and like there isn't much more to it. Like I could have, like if I was there now, I obviously could have made it work. But back then, unable to speak to other people, unable to like, not knowledgeable about food at all. Like, obviously I sucked. And I remember people didn't show me how to work the equipment. So I remember I made the chalupas or whatever. Like I put them in the fryer, and like no one told me you had to like put them in a certain way. So I fucked up like a bunch of chalupas. And I tried to pull them out of the fryer with my bare hands because I was that freaked out about it. Then my hands got burnt as fuck, obviously, because you don't put your hands in a fucking fryer. But I was like that desperate to save these chalupas. And then I remember getting yelled at about that. And after that, I remember my boss came over. She randomly got online, and she never got online. And so I was like, okay, I feel like you're testing me, and if I fuck up, I'm probably gonna get fired. And so that's basically what happened. We got hit with another rush, and I think I was about to put out a taco that didn't have the meat on it. And my boss was like, what the hell are you doing, or whatever. And I was like, was wrapping up this taco. She's like, what goes on a taco? I was like, lettuce, cheese, and I was like, oh wait, the meat. And she was like, yep, come back to the office. And that's when I got fired. And that's completely okay with me, because at the point in time that this was happening, I was still like supposed to be taking care of my grandfather who had dementia. A lot, like, me getting my job was like me standing up for myself, being like, no, I need to make my own money. Like, I can't just watch grandpa all the time, mom. Like, I'm gonna get this job. And so when I got fired, it was like, okay, like my mom is busy. She's going out a lot, like doing stuff in the real world, and she didn't have the time to like always watch my grandfather and like make him meals or whatever. And my brother, you know, he's out like with his friends all the time, so he couldn't do it. So that kind of left it to me. So when I got fired, it was like, okay, like, and then I didn't even search for a new job, because I knew like that was kind of my job, like, to do that. And you know, it was very stressful for my mom to have a job. And she even, when I got fired, she even said, this is probably a good thing. And I blew, like, the money I was making was like obviously spectacular to me at the time, but I was making minimum wage. You know, if I really wanted another job, I could have made a job that would have given me more. And that's kind of what ended up happening. But we're going to talk about that in the future. Anyway, I hope this first job story was interesting to you guys. If you worked at Taco Bell, please let me know. And if you guys have other stories like this, share them down below. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Peace. And with that, I leave you.